Welcome to Monk's Temple. Let's begin by simply acknowledging where you are right now. You're here, perhaps lying in bed, or sitting in a quiet room, or maybe you're on a bus, watching the world go by. You've come here because a part of you, even if it's a very small part, is seeking a different quality of mind. A quality that isn't rushed, or agitated, or caught in the endless loop of worry. You're seeking a kind of stillness. And that is the most significant first step you could possibly take. We spend so much of our lives reacting. Something happens, and immediately, we react. A comment from a colleague, a memory that surfaces, a worry about the future, and just like that, our inner weather changes. The sun is replaced by clouds. The calm lake becomes a stormy sea. And we live our lives at the mercy of this weather, believing we have no choice but to be swept up in it. But what if I told you that you are not the weather? What if I told you that you are the sky? The vast, open, unchanging sky that simply holds the clouds, the storms, the rain, and the sunshine, without ever being damaged or defined by them. This is the fundamental insight we will explore together over this long, gentle journey. We will look at one specific type of inner weather that causes the most damage in our lives, especially in our pursuit of knowledge, peace, and happiness. We're talking about anger. Not just the explosive, red-faced rage, but the subtle irritation, the quiet resentment, the low-grade frustration that can simmer beneath the surface for years. We're going to understand what it does to the mind, why we cling to it, and most importantly, how to create a space between the trigger and our response. How to become the sky, rather than the storm. Think about your own mind for a moment. Imagine it's a pristine, crystal-clear mountain lake. In its natural state, the water is so clear you can see every pebble at the bottom, every fish swimming by. The surface reflects the blue sky and the passing clouds with perfect fidelity. This is the mind's potential, a state of profound clarity, peace, and awareness. In this state, learning is effortless. Understanding dawns naturally. You can read a page from a book and absorb its meaning completely. You can listen to a friend and truly hear them, not just their words, but the feeling behind them. You can look at a problem and see its solution clearly. But what happens when we throw a stone into that lake? The clarity is instantly gone, replaced by ripples and distortion. You can no longer see the bottom. The reflection of the sky is broken into 1,000 shimmering fragments. This is what happens to the mind when anger arises. It's not just a feeling. It's a literal, biological, and psychological event that shatters our capacity for clear perception. The ancient Buddhist texts describe this state as a mind that is afflicted. It's a mind that has lost its suppleness, its clarity, and its ability to function optimally. Let's look at this through a modern psychological lens. When you perceive a threat, and your mind perceives an insult, an injustice, or even a frustrating traffic jam as a threat, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, hijacks the entire nervous system. It triggers the release of cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate skyrockets. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Blood is diverted from your prefrontal cortex, the rational, thinking, planning part of your brain, and sent to your limbs, preparing you to fight or flee. This is an ancient, survival-based mechanism. It's fantastic if you're facing a saber-toothed tiger. It's disastrous if you're trying to study for a final exam, have a calm conversation with your partner, or make a rational decision about your future. In that state of physiological arousal, your IQ can effectively drop by 20 or 30 points. You literally cannot think straight. You cannot memorize. You cannot understand complex ideas. You become, for all intents and purposes, temporarily stupid. Not stupid in a permanent sense, but your access to your own intelligence is completely blocked. It's like having a supercomputer that you can only use to play a single, simple, aggressive game. The immense processing power is there, but it's inaccessible because the operating system has been locked down by fear and anger. This is not a moral failing. It's not a sign that you are a bad person. It is a simple, universal law of the mind. An angry mind is an unclear mind. A turbulent mind cannot hold a steady reflection. A boiling pot of water cannot make you a cup of tea. And yet, we sit down with our books, our minds boiling, and we wonder why we can't remember a single thing we just read. We get angry at ourselves for not being able to focus, which adds more fuel to the fire, and the water just gets hotter and hotter. It's a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. So, what is the solution? The first, most intuitive impulse is to try and fight the storm. We tell ourselves, stop being angry. Just calm down. But this is like trying to smooth out rough water with your hand. The more you agitate the surface, the more ripples you create. You cannot fight fire with fire. You cannot fight anger with more anger, even if that anger is directed at the anger itself. The Buddha, the great physician of the mind, didn't teach us to fight the storm. He taught us how to find the stillness at the center of it. He taught us how to turn off the heat. Imagine you have a pot of water boiling furiously on the stove. It's bubbling, spitting steam, opaque with turbulence. Your first thought might be to grab a spoon and try to stir it into calmness. That's useless. Or you might try to blow on it to cool it down, which is equally ineffective. The only thing that works is simple: you turn off the flame. You remove the source of heat. And then, you wait. You don't have to do anything else. The water, by its very nature, will gradually settle. The sediment will sink to the bottom. The surface will become still. The water will return to its natural, clear, reflective state all by itself. Your mind is exactly the same. The anger is the boiling. It's a state of agitation. The things that make you angry, the insults, the frustrations, the memories, the perceived injustices, those are the flames. The first and most powerful step you can take is to simply turn off the burner. Remove yourself from the source of the heat. I once knew a young man, a brilliant software engineer named Arun, who was responsible for a massive server room that housed the data for an entire city. This room was kept at a perfectly controlled, frigid temperature. The servers hummed along in perfect harmony, processing millions of requests every second. It was a temple of logic and efficiency. One day, a junior technician, eager to prove himself, accidentally disabled the main cooling system while running a diagnostic. He didn't realize his mistake. Within an hour, the temperature in the server room began to climb. Arun was in a meeting when he got an alert on his phone. He excused himself and walked into the server room. The change was immediate and shocking. The air was hot and stale. The once peaceful hum had become a frantic, high-pitched whine as the internal fans of the servers spun at maximum speed, trying to cool themselves down. Warning lights were flashing red everywhere. The whole room felt like it was in a state of panic. Arun's first reaction was a surge of pure, hot rage. He knew exactly who had been working on the system. He imagined storming over to the junior technician's desk and screaming at him. He imagined calling his manager and demanding the young man be fired on the spot. In his mind, this was a catastrophic, unforgivable mistake that could cost the company millions. His own heart was pounding, his face was flushed. He had become like one of the overheating servers, his own internal systems flashing red. But Arun, having practiced a little mindfulness, paused for just a single breath. In that pause, he had a moment of clarity. He realized that his anger, while completely justified in his own mind, was actually the same problem. The servers were overheating because of a loss of cooling. His mind was overheating because of a loss of cooling. The solution wasn't to add more heat by screaming and blaming. The solution was to restore the cooling. He took another breath, deliberately cooling his own internal temperature. He didn't suppress his anger, he just didn't act on it. He walked calmly to the environmental control panel, saw the cooling system had been manually disabled, and reactivated it. Then, he started opening doors and windows in the room to let the hot air out. He focused on the practical, physical steps needed to solve the core problem. Within 20 minutes, the temperature began to drop. The server's frantic whine subsided back into a peaceful hum. The red lights turned off. Later, he spoke to the junior technician. He was still firm, but his mind was cool and clear. He explained the gravity of the mistake without the toxic heat of blame. The technician, instead of becoming defensive, was genuinely remorseful and learned a powerful lesson. Arun's clarity saved the situation. His anger would have only created 2 disasters instead of 1. The lesson here is profound for us as students, as learners, as human beings. When your mind is boiling with anger, frustration, or even mild irritation, you are operating in a state of system failure. Your internal cooling is off. Trying to study, to learn, to understand, or to communicate in this state is like trying to run complex software on an overheating computer. It will crash. It will make errors. It won't function. If this simple truth is resonating with you, if you're beginning to see the countless times your own anger has sabotaged your focus and your peace, then please, take a moment to support this work. Hit the subscribe button. It's a small, simple act, but it's like telling the algorithm, and telling yourself, yes, I want more of this. I want to cultivate a cooler, clearer mind. When you subscribe, you join a community of people who are choosing to turn down the heat, to become the sky, not the storm. It helps this temple of peace grow, so we can reach more people with these timeless teachings. Please, take that moment now, and subscribe. Now, turning off the burner is the first step. It's the emergency response. You remove yourself from the toxic conversation, you step away from the frustrating task, you close the book that's making you feel stupid. You create physical and mental space. But the water is still hot. The mind is still agitated. The sediment is still swirling. What do you do while you wait for it to cool? You don't just sit there and stare at it impatiently, willing it to be still. That impatience is just another form of heat. This is where we introduce the second, more subtle, and more transformative practice. Once you've turned off the external flame, you can begin to cool the mind from the inside out. And the most powerful coolants are the ones the Buddha called the immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are not just nice, fluffy sentiments. They are specific, powerful mental states that directly counteract the heat of anger. Think of anger as a specific type of mental fire. It has fuel. That fuel is often a story we tell ourselves. The story goes something like, "They wronged me. This isn't fair. I don't deserve this. They are bad. I am right." This story is like throwing gasoline on the flames. The more we rehearse it in our minds, the hotter we get. The practice of loving kindness, or metta, is like pouring cool, clear water on that fire. It's the intentional cultivation of a wish for well-being, first for yourself, and then for others. It sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. When you're angry at someone, the last thing you want to do is wish them well. You want them to suffer. You want them to feel the pain they've caused you. But holding on to that wish for them to suffer is like drinking poison yourself and waiting for them to die. It doesn't harm them at all. It only keeps your own water boiling. There is a story of two neighboring farmers who had a long-standing dispute over a boundary line. It had been going on for years, a constant source of irritation and resentment. One spring, the first farmer planted his corn right up to the line he believed was his. A few weeks later, he noticed that his neighbor's cows had gotten through a weak spot in the fence and had trampled a whole section of his young corn. He was furious. He stormed into his house, ready to grab his shotgun and go confront the neighbor. But his elderly mother was sitting on the porch. She saw the rage in his face and said, "Where are you going with all that fire?" He explained about the corn, the cows, the years of dispute. His mother listened patiently. Then she said, "You know, when I was a young bride, your father had a similar problem with his own brother. They didn't speak for 10 years over a plow that was borrowed and never returned. Your father died with a hard knot in his chest whenever he thought of his brother. On his deathbed, he told me his only regret was that he never planted a garden." The farmer was confused. "A garden? What does a garden have to do with my corn?" His mother smiled. "Your father realized, too late, that a boundary line isn't a place for battle. It's a place for planting. Instead of planting anger on that line, he wished he had planted something beautiful. Something that would benefit both sides." The farmer looked out at his trampled corn, then at the fence line. The rage was still there, but the mother's words had planted a tiny seed of a different possibility. He didn't go to his neighbor with his gun. He went the next morning, still angry, but curious. He walked along the fence line, inspecting the damage. He noticed that the weak spot in the fence was on his side. It was his responsibility to fix it. He also noticed that the grass on his neighbor's side of the fence was sparse and dry, while a small stream ran through his own property. He didn't apologize for his anger, it was still there, smoldering. But instead of focusing on the trampled corn, he spent the day fixing the fence. A few days later, he dug a small trench, diverting a trickle of the stream onto his neighbor's side of the fence. He did it quietly, without any expectation. A month later, he saw his neighbor walking towards him. The old man's face was not angry, but puzzled. He pointed to the lush green grass that was now growing near the fence line. "My cows have been unusually content," the neighbor said. "I couldn't figure out why. Then I saw this water." He looked at the younger farmer. "Why would you do this?" The farmer shrugged. "The boundary line isn't a place for a fight. It's a place for a garden." In that moment, something shifted. The anger that had been boiling between them for years began to cool. It wasn't gone instantly, but the heat was turned down. They started talking about the fence, the cows, and eventually, the old boundary dispute. They didn't solve it that day, but they solved something more important. They watered a different seed. This is the practice of loving kindness and compassion in action. It's not about being a doormat. It's about recognizing that your own peace is more valuable than being right. It's about understanding that the person who angered you is also boiling. They are also suffering from their own heat, their own greed, hatred, or ignorance. Compassion is the wish for them to be free from that suffering. It's recognizing, they are acting this way because they are in pain. They are caught in their own storm. This understanding doesn't excuse their behavior, but it changes your relationship to it. It cools your reaction. You can practice this in your own life. The next time someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of rehearsing a story about what a terrible person they are, try this simple mental phrase: just like me, they want to be happy. Just like me, they are probably stressed and in a hurry. Just like me, they make mistakes. See how that feels. It doesn't mean you approve of their driving. It just means you're choosing not to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. And then there's compassion for yourself. This is perhaps the most crucial element. We are often our own worst tormentors. We get angry at ourselves for getting angry. We get frustrated with ourselves for being distracted. We beat ourselves up for not being able to concentrate. This is like trying to put out a fire by throwing on more wood. Self-compassion is the ability to turn that same understanding inward. When you're struggling to study and your mind is all over the place, can you say to yourself, "This is hard right now. It's okay. My mind is agitated. Let me take a break. Let me give myself a moment of kindness." This simple act of self-kindness is the most effective cooling mechanism there is. It allows the sediment to settle. It allows the water to become clear again. So, we have the first tool, turning off the burner. Removing yourself from the trigger. And we have the second tool, applying the coolants of loving kindness and compassion. But there's a third tool, and it's one that the Buddha placed at the very heart of his teaching. It's the practice of mindfulness, of present moment awareness. Mindfulness is not about making your mind blank. It's not about stopping your thoughts. That's impossible. The mind is designed to think, just as the heart is designed to beat. Trying to stop your thoughts is like trying to stop your heart, a futile and dangerous effort. Mindfulness is about changing your relationship to your thoughts. It's about stepping out of the movie and watching it from the balcony. Imagine you're sitting in a dark movie theater. You're completely absorbed in a thriller. The hero is in danger, your heart is pounding, your hands are sweating. You are lost in the story. You are the story. Then, someone turns on the lights in the theater for just a second. In that flash, you see the screen. You see that it's just light and shadow. You see the other people sitting in their seats. You see the exit signs. You remember, oh, I'm in a theater. This is just a movie. Even after the lights go out again, your experience of the movie is subtly different. You're still engaged, but a part of you knows it's not ultimately real. You have perspective. Mindfulness is that light. It's the ability to periodically turn on the lights in the theater of your mind and see thoughts and feelings for what they are, just mental events, just energy passing through. They are not you. They are not commands you have to obey. They are just visitors passing through the vast space of your awareness. When anger arises, the non-mindful mind gets completely sucked into the movie. It becomes the anger. It believes the story. It starts planning revenge, or worrying about the future, or ruminating on the past. But the mindful mind notices, anger has arrived. I feel a burning sensation in my chest. My jaw is tight. There are thoughts about that person and what they did. You're not pushing the anger away. You're not indulging it. You're simply acknowledging its presence with a gentle, knowing awareness. You are the sky noticing a storm cloud. The cloud doesn't threaten the sky. It just passes through. This simple act of noticing creates a profound shift. It breaks the identification. It creates space. And in that space, you have a choice. You are no longer a puppet jerked around by every passing feeling. You are the puppet master, calmly deciding which strings to pull. There was once a master watchmaker renowned throughout the land for crafting the most intricate and reliable timepieces. His hands were steady, his eyes were keen, and his mind was incredibly focused. He could work for hours, assembling the tiniest gears and springs with flawless precision. Apprentices would come from far and wide to learn from him. One day, a wealthy merchant came to him with a priceless, antique pocket watch that had stopped working. It was a family heirloom, and the merchant was desperate. The watchmaker agreed to look at it. He cleared his workbench, put on his special magnifying loupe, and gently opened the back of the watch. The mechanism inside was incredibly complex, more delicate than anything he had ever seen. He knew one wrong move could ruin it forever. As he leaned in, his tweezers poised over a tiny screw, his own apprentice, who was sweeping the floor nearby, accidentally knocked over a stack of brass trays. They clattered to the stone floor with a deafening crash. The watchmaker's hand jerked. His heart leaped into his throat. A flash of pure, hot rage shot through him. He turned and glared at the apprentice, his face red, his jaw tight. In that moment, the watchmaker saw something fascinating. He didn't just feel the anger. A part of him, the master observer, was also watching the anger. He noticed the physical sensations, the pounding heart, the heat in his face, the tension in his shoulders. He noticed the thoughts, "You idiot. You ruined it. After all my teaching, you have no respect." He noticed the urge to scream, to throw something. But because he was a master of his own mind as well as his craft, he didn't act. He just watched. He saw the storm arise in the sky of his awareness. And in that watching, the storm didn't own him. It was just a weather pattern. He took a slow, deliberate breath. He turned back to the watch. With the magnifying loupe still in his eye, he looked closely. His hand, which had jerked, had not actually touched the mechanism. Everything was fine. The watch was unharmed. He then turned back to the apprentice, who was pale and trembling, expecting to be fired. The master watchmaker's face was calm now. He said, "That was a valuable lesson for both of us. For you, a reminder to be mindful of your surroundings. For me, a reminder that a master is not someone who never gets angry, but someone who can watch his anger arise without letting it touch his work." He gestured to the watch. This mechanism is too delicate for a shaky hand. And your spirit is too delicate for harsh words spoken in haste. The apprentice, instead of being scarred by the event, was inspired. He saw that mastery wasn't about perfection, but about awareness. He saw that the space between the trigger and the response was where true skill lay. This is the skill we are cultivating here. It's the skill of the watchmaker. The world will always provide triggers. People will always be careless, or mean, or frustrating. Traffic will always jam. Exams will always be stressful. The triggers are not the problem. The problem is our automatic, unconscious reaction to them. We are trying to replace reaction with response. Reaction is automatic, habitual, and driven by the heat of the moment. Response is conscious, chosen, and arises from a cool, clear mind. And how do we build this capacity for response? We build it through the formal practice of meditation. This is the gym where we train the muscle of mindfulness. We sit quietly, and we focus on a simple anchor, like the sensation of the breath. The mind wanders off, it gets lost in a memory, a plan, a fantasy, an irritation. The moment we notice it has wandered, that moment of noticing is the light turning on in the theater. We gently, without judgment, escort our attention back to the breath. That's one rep: wander, notice, return. Wander, notice, return. This seemingly simple practice is actually building a new neural pathway in the brain. It's strengthening the muscle of metacognition, the ability to be aware of our own thoughts. It's teaching us, in a very safe and controlled environment, how to handle distraction and agitation. And the skills we build on the cushion translate directly into our daily lives. We become better at noticing the anger when it's just a small spark, before it becomes a raging fire. We become better at creating that crucial space of choice. So, for a student, this is not some esoteric, religious ritual. It's the most practical thing you can do. 10 minutes of mindful breathing before you open your textbook is like sharpening a knife before you use it. It primes the mind for clarity. It settles the sediment. It cools the water. It allows you to access the full power of your own intelligence. A young concert pianist had just moved into a new apartment. She had a big performance coming up, a piece by Chopin that was notoriously difficult, requiring absolute focus and delicate touch. She needed to practice for hours every day. Her new neighbor upstairs, however, had a different idea of a good time. He was a retired drummer who loved to play along with loud rock music, late into the evening. The bass would thump through the ceiling, rattling her pictures and shattering her concentration. The first few days, the pianist was furious. She would sit at her beautiful grand piano, hands poised over the keys, and just as she entered a state of deep focus, the thumping would start. She would clench her fists, her jaw would tighten, and she'd stare at the ceiling, seething. She tried to practice through it, but her playing became heavy, aggressive, completely lacking the nuance Chopin required. Her anger was making her a worse pianist. She wrote a scathing letter to the neighbor, but tore it up, knowing it would only make things worse. She complained to the building manager, but nothing changed. One evening, in complete frustration, she sat on her piano bench, not to play, but just to breathe. She was so agitated she couldn't think. She just focused on her breath, feeling the rise and fall of her chest. The thumping started upstairs. Her first instinct was the familiar flash of rage. But this time, she just watched it. She noticed the tension in her shoulders. She noticed the thought, he's doing this on purpose to ruin my life. She saw it as just a thought, not a fact. Then, a curious thing happened. In the space created by her mindfulness, a different thought arose. She remembered a story she'd read about a famous jazz musician who lived above a noisy nightclub. Instead of fighting the noise, he incorporated it into his music, improvising around the bass lines drifting up from below. On a whim, she placed her hands on the keys. The thumping started again. But instead of fighting it, she listened. She found the rhythm of the drums. And then, softly, she began to play. She played with the drums, not against them. Her Chopin took on a new, unexpected, syncopated life. She was no longer a victim of the noise. She was in a duet with it. A few days later, she ran into the neighbor in the hallway. He started to apologize, expecting another complaint. But she smiled. "Don't apologize," she said. "You've been teaching me to listen in a whole new way. This is the ultimate freedom. It's not about getting the world to be quiet so you can study. It's about developing a mind so steady, so clear, so vast, that it cannot be disturbed by the noise. It's about turning the noise itself into part of your practice. The angry mind says, this shouldn't be happening. The mindful mind says, this is happening. What can I learn from it? This path we're on is a journey from being a slave to your circumstances to being the sovereign of your own inner world. It's a journey from reactivity to responsiveness. It's a journey from a boiling, turbulent pot of water to a deep, clear, mountain lake. Let's delve deeper into this metaphor of the lake. A lake can be disturbed by the wind. Ripples form, the surface is agitated, and for a while, you can't see the bottom. But the depth of the lake remains unaffected. The deep, still water far below the surface is never troubled by the wind. It remains eternally cool, calm, and clear. Your true nature, the Buddha taught, is like the depth of that lake. The winds of anger, irritation, frustration, and worry only disturb the surface. They create ripples in your consciousness. But they cannot touch your essential nature. The problem is, we identify with the surface. We think we are the ripples. We become the anger. We become the worry. We lose all contact with the profound stillness that is our birthright. The entire practice of mindfulness, loving kindness, and wisdom is designed to help us reconnect with that depth. It's to help us realize, not just intellectually, but in our bones, that we are the vast, deep lake, not the fleeting ripples on its surface. When you know yourself as the lake, the winds of life lose their power to disturb you. You see them coming, you see them go, and through it all, you remain. There was a master calligrapher who was so skilled that emperors would wait years for one of his scrolls. His secret, it was said, was not in his brush technique, but in his breathing. Before he would even mix his ink, he would sit for an hour, just watching his breath. He would not pick up the brush until his mind was as still as a pool of ink in a perfect, dark bottle. One day, a young, ambitious student came to him, desperate to learn. The master agreed to take him on. For the first 6 months, the master would not let the student touch a brush. He only made him sit and watch his breath. The student grew impatient. He could feel his talent wasting away. "When will I learn to paint?" he would ask. The master would just smile and say, "When the ink is still." One afternoon, as the student was struggling through his sitting practice, a group of soldiers rode into the courtyard. Their leader, a gruff general, burst into the room, demanding a scroll immediately. He had heard of the master's skill and wanted a gift for the emperor. He threw a bag of gold on the table. "Now," he bellowed. The student's heart leaped into his throat. He was terrified of the soldiers. He looked at the master, expecting him to be flustered. But the master was perfectly calm. He looked at the general, not with fear or anger, but with a gentle curiosity. He saw the general's red face, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand gripped his sword. He saw a man boiling with impatience and arrogance, a man deeply unhappy. The master slowly rose. He went to his table. He did not mix the ink in a hurry. He sat, took a few conscious breaths, and then, with the same deliberate pace he always used, he began to grind the ink stick on the stone. The general huffed and puffed, but the master's rhythm was unshakable. The sound of the ink grinding was the only calm thing in the room. Finally, the ink was ready. The master picked up his brush. He looked at the blank scroll for a long moment, his mind utterly clear. Then, in one fluid, continuous motion, he painted a single stroke, a bamboo stalk, strong yet supple, bending in a wind that wasn't there. He put down the brush. He looked at the general. "For the emperor," he said quietly. The general stared at the scroll. The power and grace in that single stroke were breathtaking. It held the stillness of the mountain and the movement of the wind. The general's bluster deflated. He nodded, speechless, took the scroll, and left. The student was amazed. "Master, how could you be so calm? Weren't you angry at his rudeness? Weren't you afraid?" The master looked at his student. "The general is a wind," he said. "A strong, hot wind. If you are a ripple on the surface, the wind will blow you away. But if you are the depth of the ocean, what is a wind to you?" I was not calm despite the general. I was calm because I am the depth. The general just reminded me of it. This is the state we are cultivating. A state where external chaos cannot disturb our internal order. It doesn't mean we become passive or that we don't act. The master acted. He painted a masterpiece. But his action arose from stillness, not from reaction. He didn't paint out of fear of the general, or out of anger at his rudeness. He painted from his true nature. For you, the student, the generals, in your life might be an upcoming exam, a difficult assignment, a conflict with a roommate, or the pressure of expectations. They burst into your peaceful courtyard, demanding results, demanding your attention, and filling you with heat. The practice is to recognize that you are not the surface of the lake that these winds disturb. You are the depth. You are the master calligrapher. You are the vast, open sky. So, how do we practically apply this when we are studying? How do we move from theory to practice in the trenches of daily life? First, set the conditions for clarity before you begin. Just as a farmer prepares the soil before planting, you must prepare your mind before studying. Don't just pick up a book when your mind is still buzzing from a social interaction, a stressful commute, or an argument. Take 5 or 10 minutes to settle. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring your attention to your breath. Just watch the natural rhythm of inhalation and exhalation. Don't try to control it. Just feel the sensations. Thoughts will come, that's fine. Just keep bringing your attention back to the breath. This is your pre-study ritual. It's turning off the internal chatter and allowing the water to become still. Second, recognize the early warning signs of the heat. Anger and frustration rarely explode out of nowhere. They send messengers first. Maybe it's a subtle feeling of tightness in your chest. Maybe it's a slight furrow in your brow. Maybe it's a thought like, "This is too hard," or "I'll never understand this." Learn to recognize these messengers. When they arrive, don't ignore them. Don't push through. Acknowledge them. Frustration is knocking at the door. This simple acknowledgement prevents the frustration from taking over. It gives you the chance to respond wisely. Third, take mindfulness breaks during your study session. Every 20 or 30 minutes, just pause for 30 seconds. Put the book down. Look away from the screen. Take 3 deep, conscious breaths. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your body in the chair. This is like shaking the Etch-a-Sketch. It clears the mental static and resets your focus. It prevents the slow buildup of agitation that can lead to a boiling point. Fourth, when you feel the heat rising, don't fight your material. If you're reading a difficult paragraph and you feel frustration building, stop reading. Continuing to read while frustrated is like trying to fill a pot that's already boiling over. You're just making a mess. Instead, close the book. Go for a walk. Look out the window. Do something physical for a few minutes. Allow the body to discharge some of that adrenaline. Then, when you feel a little cooler, come back and try again. You'll be amazed at how much clearer the paragraph seems. There was a young sculptor who was commissioned to carve a magnificent lion from a massive block of pristine white marble. He was incredibly excited and started immediately. For the first week, he worked with passion and focus, and the rough shape of the lion began to emerge from the stone. Then, he hit a problem. He started working on the lion's face, the most delicate and important part. But every time he tried to carve the eye, the marble would chip in a way he didn't intend. He tried again, and it chipped again. He tried a different tool, and it chipped even worse. His vision of the perfect lion was being ruined by this stubborn, unyielding stone. Frustration began to build. At first, it was a small irritation. Then it grew into a hot, angry pressure. He started attacking the stone, hitting it harder, faster, with less precision. This, of course, only made things worse. He created a deep, irreparable flaw right in the center of the lion's face. He threw down his hammer and chisel in despair and stormed out of his studio, convinced he was a failure. He didn't return for 3 days. On the 3rd day, his old teacher, a master sculptor herself, came to find him. She found him sitting by a river, staring at the water. He told her the whole story, his voice still thick with anger and self-recrimination. "The stone betrayed me," he said. "It was flawed." The teacher sat with him in silence for a while, watching the river flow. Then she picked up a small, smooth, oval-shaped stone from the riverbank. She handed it to him. "What is this?" she asked. "It's a stone," he said, confused. "How did it become so smooth?" she asked. He looked at the stone, then at the flowing river. The water, over time, it smoothed it. The teacher nodded. The water didn't attack the stone. It didn't fight it. It just flowed around it, over it, and through it, for years and years. The stone didn't betray you. You betrayed yourself. You tried to force your vision onto the marble with the heat of your will. But a great sculptor doesn't fight the stone. She listens to it. She finds the lion that is already inside, and she helps it free itself with patience, not force. Your anger was a chisel, but it was the wrong tool for the job. The right tool is a mind as patient as this river. The young sculptor looked at the smooth stone in his hand, then at the flowing water. He understood. He went back to his studio. He didn't look at the ruined lion's face. Instead, he spent the next week just being with the stone. He would sit in front of it for hours, just looking, feeling its texture, sensing its weight. He let his mind become like the river, patient, flowing, attentive. And then, one day, he saw it. The flaw wasn't a flaw at all. It was an opportunity. The chip in the marble could become the lion's open mouth, mid-roar. The supposed mistake became the most powerful, dynamic part of the entire sculpture. This is the wisdom we bring to our studies. The difficult text, the confusing concept, the memory lapse, these are not flaws in the stone. They are opportunities. They are invitations to a different kind of attention. If you attack them with the heat of frustration, you will only create deeper problems. But if you approach them with the patience of a river, with a mind that is cool and attentive, you will find a way through. You will discover that the difficulty itself can become the source of your deepest understanding. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a renowned herbalist. She knew the secret healing properties of every plant, root, and fungus in the forest. She took on an apprentice, a bright young woman eager to learn. The herbalist's method of teaching was unique. She would take the apprentice into the forest and point to a plant. "This is for fevers," she would say, and then she would walk on. She gave no further explanation. The apprentice tried to memorize everything, but it was overwhelming. There were hundreds of plants. She would lie awake at night, her mind churning, trying to remember which leaf was for stomach aches and which root was for headaches. She grew anxious and frustrated. She felt she was failing. One day, the herbalist pointed to a small, unassuming plant with silvery leaves. "This is for calming an agitated mind," she said, and walked away. The apprentice stared at the plant. An agitated mind. She certainly had one of those. On a whim, she plucked a few leaves. She didn't know what to do with them, so she just put them in her pocket and kept them there. Over the next few days, whenever she felt the familiar surge of anxiety about her studies, she would take the leaves out of her pocket and just look at them, or hold them, or smell their faint, earthy scent. She wasn't trying to use them as medicine. She was just using them as a reminder. A reminder of the herbalist's words. A reminder that there was a plant for this very feeling. As the weeks passed, something shifted. Her anxiety didn't disappear, but her relationship to it changed. The silvery leaves became a symbol. When she felt her mind starting to boil, she would touch the leaves in her pocket, and it would create a tiny pause. In that pause, she could take a breath. She could remember that this feeling was just a passing state. She could remember that there were plants in the forest for every ailment, including this one. One day, the herbalist saw her reach for her pocket. She smiled. "You have found the true medicine," she said. "It is not in the leaf. It is in the attention you bring to the leaf. It is in the reminder that you are not your agitation. You are the one who notices the agitation. That noticing is the healing." The apprentice finally understood. The hundreds of plants were just facts. The true wisdom was the capacity of her own mind to be present, to be aware, to hold her own experience with kindness. And from that place of calm awareness, the facts could then be learned with ease. This is the ultimate lesson for the student. You can have all the textbooks, all the apps, all the productivity hacks in the world. But if your mind is boiling, they are useless. The most important study tool you will ever own is a calm, clear, focused mind. And that tool is built, moment by moment, breath by breath, through the practices we are discussing. It's built by turning off the burner when you notice the heat. It's built by applying the coolants of compassion to yourself and others. It's built by watching the storms arise and pass in the vast, open sky of your awareness. In a bustling city, there lived a master weaver, famous for creating tapestries of astonishing complexity and beauty. Her secret was not just her skill with the loom, but her relationship with the thread. She treated every single strand with respect. She would never pull a thread that was tangled. She knew that pulling only made the knot tighter. Instead, she would stop. She would gently lift the tangled thread, examine it closely to see how the knot was formed, and then, with the utmost patience, she would work it loose, strand by strand. A young woman came to study with her. She was talented but impatient. One day, while working on a large, important tapestry, she created a terrible tangle. In a panic, she grabbed the thread and pulled hard. The knot tightened into a hard, unforgiving ball. She pulled again, harder. The thread snapped. Now she had a broken thread and a tangled knot, and the entire tapestry was threatened. She ran to the master weaver, crying. The master came and looked at the damage. She didn't scold. She simply sat down at the loom. She looked at the tight knot, the broken ends. Then she did something surprising. She didn't try to fix it. She just looked at it, breathing calmly. The young woman watched, confused. After a long minute, the master reached out. With incredibly delicate fingers, she didn't pull, but pushed gently on one part of the knot. Then she pushed on another. She didn't use force, just gentle, persistent pressure. Slowly, miraculously, the knot began to loosen. Once it was loose enough, she was able to carefully untwist the strands. Then, she took the two broken ends and, with a special technique, wove them back together so seamlessly that the repair was invisible. She turned to the young woman. "The thread," she said, "is like your mind. When you encounter a difficult problem, a tangle in your understanding, what is your first reaction?" "To pull," the young woman said. "To force it." Yes, said the master. You pull with your anger, with your frustration, with your, I must solve this now. But pulling only tightens the knot. It only breaks the thread. A true weaver, when she meets a tangle, meets it first with stillness. She studies it. She understands it. And then, with patience, she finds the way to loosen it, not with force, but with wisdom. This is precisely how to approach a difficult subject. When you hit a concept you don't understand, don't attack it. Don't read the same sentence over and over, faster and faster, with increasing frustration. That's pulling on the thread. Stop. Put the book down. Look at the tangle in your mind with curiosity, not anger. Ah, this is a knot. How is it formed? Then, approach it from different angles. Read a different explanation. Ask a friend. Take a break and let your subconscious work on it. Push gently here, push gently there. You will find that when you approach a problem with a calm, patient mind, the solution reveals itself much more easily than when you try to force it with the heat of your will. A grandfather and his grandson went to fly a kite on a wide, open hillside. The wind was strong and perfect. The grandson, full of excitement, ran with the kite, and soon it was soaring high above them, a tiny speck of color against the blue sky. The grandfather held the string, feeling the powerful tug of the wind. He handed the string to the boy. "Hold it tight," he said, "but not too tight." The boy held the string. The kite tugged and pulled, wanting to fly even higher. The boy, feeling the power, instinctively gripped the string tighter and tighter, pulling back against the wind. Suddenly, with a loud snap, the string broke. The kite, freed from its tether, didn't soar higher. It tumbled and spun wildly, caught in the chaotic grip of the wind, and crashed to the ground far away. The boy was heartbroken. He looked at his grandfather. "I held it tight, like you said." The grandfather put his arm around him. "I said hold it tight, but not too tight. You see, the string needs to be taut enough to feel the kite, but loose enough to let the wind do its work. When you gripped it too tight, you weren't flying the kite anymore. You were fighting the wind. And you can't fight the wind. You have to dance with it. Our minds are like that kite string. Our goals, our studies, our ambitions are the kite. The challenges of life, the difficult concepts, the distractions, the frustrations, these are the wind. If we are too loose, if we have no focus or discipline, the kite won't fly. We are aimless. But if we grip too tight, if we are rigid, controlling, and full of tension and anger at anything that interferes with our plan, we will eventually snap. We break under the pressure. The art of study, the art of living, is in finding the right tension. It's in holding our goals with a light grip, a gentle intention. It's in staying connected to our purpose, the kite, while allowing the inevitable winds of difficulty, frustration, confusion, distraction to blow through us without breaking us. The tight, angry grip is what breaks the string. The relaxed, mindful grip allows us to dance with the wind, to use its very power to keep the kite soaring. Once, there was a king who loved knowledge above all else. He spent a fortune collecting every book, every scroll, every manuscript in the known world. He built a vast, magnificent library to house them. He appointed the wisest scholar in the land as the royal librarian, charging him with organizing and protecting this immense treasure. One day, a fire broke out in a wing of the palace. It spread quickly, and soon it threatened the library. The king was frantic. He ran to the library, expecting to find the librarian desperately trying to save the books. Instead, he found the librarian sitting calmly in the center of the great hall, surrounded by towering shelves of flammable scrolls. He wasn't moving any books. He wasn't shouting for water. He was just sitting there, perfectly still, with his eyes closed. The king was furious. "What are you doing?" he screamed. "The fire is coming. Save the books. This is your duty." The librarian opened his eyes. He looked at the king with perfect peace. "Your Majesty," he said, "the books you see around you are not the library. They are only the containers. The true library, the knowledge, the wisdom, the ideas, is here." He touched his head. "And here." He touched his heart. "It cannot be burned. It cannot be stolen. It is the only thing that is truly safe." The king was speechless. In that moment, he understood. The librarian's body was in danger, but his mind was unshaken. He had spent his life internalizing the wisdom, not just hoarding the books. And in that moment of crisis, he was free. This is the ultimate security we are building. We study not just to pass exams, but to internalize understanding. We practice mindfulness not just to focus better, but to build an inner citadel of peace that cannot be destroyed by any external fire. The angry mind is like a library on fire, all its knowledge is lost in the chaos, consumed by the flames of its own agitation. The peaceful mind, the mindful mind, is the librarian who has internalized the wisdom. It carries its treasure within, safe from any storm. As we draw this long, gentle journey to a close, let's return to the simple image we started with, the jug of water. Your mind is that jug. Every day, life will put it on the stove. People will say things. Exams will loom. Plans will fail. The heat will be turned on. You will feel the urge to boil, to bubble over, to become opaque with anger and frustration. But now, you have a choice. You have the tools. You can see the flame for what it is. You can reach over and turn it off. You can step away from the heat. You can apply the cool, clear water of compassion to yourself and to others. You can sit and watch the storm of thoughts and feelings with the steady, knowing awareness of the sky. You can let the water cool. You can let the sediment settle. And then, in that perfect, pristine stillness, you can see clearly. You can learn. You can understand. You can love. You can live. Your anger will never help you. It will never solve a problem. It will never make you smarter. It will never bring you peace. It is a fire that burns only you. The path of the Buddha, the path of mindfulness, the path of psychological insight, is simply the path of learning to let the fire go out. It is the path of returning to your natural state, cool, clear, and infinitely capable. So, the next time you sit down to study, or to work, or to simply be with another person, remember the jug of water. Check your temperature. If you feel the heat, pause. Breathe. Turn off the burner. Become the lake. Become the sky. Become the stillness from which all wise action arises. Thank you for spending this time at Monk's Temple. May your mind be cool. May your heart be clear. May your studies be fruitful. And may you carry this peace with you, wherever you go. Until we meet again.